Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make a Hemostat Mandala, and for this one I tried inclining it. I'll explain why I tried inclining it in just a little while. I'm going to place the mandala on both the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to center the shirt. And this process is going to go really fast. But down below this video in the description is a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is getting both sides or both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other, and the same thing with the back. That way, whenever I apply the dye to the shirt, both halves of the front are going to look more similar, and same thing with the back. The next thing I'm going to do is fold the mandala portion of the shirt. I'm going to use a washable marker to mark an area of the shirt where I'd like for the center of the mandala to be. I usually like my centers to be right about level with the armpit of the shirt or just a little bit below it. I'm going to fold the hem of the shirt up to that line that I just made on my shirt, making a seam right there. Then I'm going to take the hem of the shirt and fold it halfway back down to that initial seam. Then if I pinch the fold that I just made and lift the shirt up off of the table, it's going to fold the top of the shirt down. As I go, I'm making sure to keep all of my folds straight and try to keep my shirt as wrinkle-free as possible. Then I'm going to take each side of the shirt and fold it down again. Each time I'm folding to the same side of the shirt. So if you notice, one side of the shirt has lots of folds and the other side only has 2 folds. At this point, this fold is an 8-point mandala. And like I said, I'm going to have the mandala on both the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt. If you wanted a 16-point mandala, you would just make one more fold on each side of the shirt. If I did that with this particular shirt, the fabric would be too thick for me to use my Hemostats. So I'm going to stop at an 8-point mandala. This fold is how you fold a mandala in general. So if you wanted to tie your mandala with sinew, if you wanted to do something different, this is a good starting point. You've already got your mandala fold, and then you can do whatever you want from there. I'm choosing to use Hemostats on mine, and on this one I thought it would be interesting to try both straight and curved Hemostats together. So most of the Hemostats that I'm using are 10 and 12 inch, and I've coated them with some heat shrink tubing to keep them from damaging the fabric. I am applying the first Hemostat at an angle, which is going to be the center of my mandala, right down at the very end of this fold. Then I'm going to alternate sides, adding Hemostats to each side, and the way you do this is how you can vary the way your mandala looks. Like I said, I'm going to alternate using curved and straight Hemostats. So one half of my shirt is going to have the straight and the other half is going to have the curved. And I'm going to point the curved portion down toward the center of the mandala. Right after I started applying the Hemostats, I came in and used my washable marker to mark where the neck of the shirt is. I don't want to take my Hemostats past that area of the shirt. So that is the orange mark that you see on the shirt right now. You can do whatever you want though. You can actually continue applying Hemostats all the way out to the end of the fabric if that's what you'd like. I had a viewer tell me that they wrap rubber bands around the handles of their Hemostats to keep them from popping off. So I tried it a couple of times and it works wonderfully. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm wrapping some small rubber bands around the handles of the Hemostats so that if they happen to come unattached, they won't pop very far. If you haven't ever worked with Hemostats, you need to be aware that because they are so tight on the fabric, if they pop off or break loose, they can fly pretty far across the room. You just want to make sure you don't get hurt by them or anybody around gets hurt. I try to choose Hemostats that are pretty sturdy and have a long teeth area on the Hemostats. You know, you can get 10 and 12 inch Hemostats that are really long. They're 10 and 12 inches, but the teeth area may be pretty small. I usually try to find the ones with long teeth areas. For the rest of the shirt, I'm going to do a couple large fan folds, and then I'm going to hold those folds with some rubber bands. Then because this fold is so thick, I'm going to place this shirt aside and I'm going to allow it to dry out completely before I begin applying the dye. I found that I get better color saturation in super thick folds like this if I apply the dye when the shirt is dry. If you'd like some more information about this topic, I have a blog post out on my website that addresses this topic, and I have a link down below in the description to my website. So initially when I was kind of planning this shirt, I wanted some lighter colors. So I was envisioning some lighter blues mixed with pinks and a little bit of purple. So those are the colors that I've chosen. I'm going to begin by making myself an ice barrier to go around the shirt. So I've placed the shirt on top of a metal rack, which I have over the top of a plastic tub or tote. And I'm using my silicone cake molds to make myself an ice barrier. I'm going to place the silicone cake molds in between the hemostats, and then to hold them together, I'm going to use some wooden clothespins. Around the end of the shirt, I'm going to wrap the silicone cake molds, and then I'm going to use the wooden clothespins that are attached to my metal rack to hold them in place up close to the shirt. Because this shirt is pretty thick down on that end, I'm going to take a strip of plastic cutting board, which I purchased from the Dollar Tree dollar store, and place it around the silicone cake molds, just to give myself a little bit higher ice barrier around that portion of the shirt. Then because the shirt is completely dry, I'm going to spray it with a little bit of a soda ash solution, which I've placed down inside of a spray bottle. That will help the dye stick to the top of the shirt a little bit better. So right at the very end, or what is the center of the mandala, I'm using coral pink from Dharma Trading Company. Then I usually like to use a darker color right around the hemostats to kind of give a little bit of dimension to the shirt. So normally I put the darker color on the outside of the hemostats, but because I've got the shirt inclined, I didn't want it to overtake the color in front. So I decided to try to put a very thin line of a darker color on the inside of the hemostats. So on the blues, I'm going to use Deep Space from Dharma Trading Company, and on the more pink colors, I'm going to use Huckleberry from Dye Spin. So I'm going to start with the Huckleberry, and I'm going to use that just right on the inside of the bottom hemostat for each one of those sections. I'm going to do the same thing with the Deep Space on the blue side. So whenever you make a hemostat mandala, all of those top areas are going to be separated by all of the bottom areas when the mandala is actually finished. So what you're going to see on the shirt is you're going to see like a pink area and a blue area and a pink and a blue and so on. So the colors that I've chosen for the pink areas are Chantilly Pink from Dye Spin, Bazooka Pink from Dharma Trading Company, and Powder Pink from Dharma Trading Company. I know Bazooka Pink for sure is a special order color from Dharma. You can usually still get those from Dharma, but you have to order really large quantities. Otherwise, you can usually find them out on a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace, and I have a link to that Facebook group down below this video in the description. People out there buy them in large quantities, and then they break them down and sell them in smaller quantities to other tie-dyers. I'm going to repeat the same process on the bottom layer of hemostats, starting with a thin line of Deep Space right up next to the hemostats, followed by Blue Pervinca from Dye Spin, Sapphire Blue from Dharma Trading Company, and Wild Chicory from Dye Spin. On the remaining portion of the shirt, I'm going to place a line of Spanish lavender, which was a muck-dyed color from Dharma Trading Company. That's one that they sold in spring of 2024, and it's no longer available. On either side of the Spanish lavender, I'm going to place a line of the Huckleberry from Die Spin, and on the other side, I'm going to place Deep Space from Dharma. Then I'm going to fill in the remaining portions with some more of the Spanish lavender from Dharma. I'm going to finish it off with an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top, and I'm going to add on some ice. Once I have the ice on the shirt, I'm going to place one end of this metal rack down inside of the bottom of the container to go ahead and incline the shirt. I made one of these Hemostat Mandala shirts where I did the outer portion of the mandala the same way I did this one. And because it kind of sloped in toward the mandala, the color from the outer portion ran into my mandala. So I thought, well, let's just incline it, and then that way the color won't run that direction. Well, that was my brilliant idea. It didn't exactly work out that way, and you'll see that when the mandala is finished. So I did have to go ahead and touch up my ice just a little bit because some of it did shift once I went ahead and put the shirt at an incline. But I went ahead and placed the shirt aside, and I allowed the ice to melt. After this layer of ice melted, I still had quite a bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I added a second layer of ice. After the second layer of ice melted, I added a third layer of ice. I wanted to make sure I got plenty of liquid to force this dye down through the shirt because it is pretty thick. After that last layer of ice melted, I went ahead and waited probably about 24 to 48 hours before I rinsed the shirt. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I started rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I took the hemostats off of the shirt, untied it, and went ahead and warmed the water up to hot to continue rinsing out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and I allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out, and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine, and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? So I think it's a pretty shirt. It's just a lot. I did not have this envisioned. First off, I wanted a lighter colored shirt, more pastel or softer colors, but several things went wrong with that. The number one thing that I did is when I added the Huckleberry and the Deep Space, those did run into the areas a little bit, mix with the lighter colors I'd chosen, and make them darker. That's not super surprising. But then on the outer portion of the shirt, I used just too many darker colors. It's just really pretty busy in that area. As far as the inclining goes, it did help to keep the darker colors from flowing into the mandala portion. But the mandala portion flowed out into the other colors. So it gets a little bit muddy up toward the top of the shirt. I don't know that muddy is the right word, but the colors definitely flow together up there. So you have a lot of blue in that space. I don't think it looks bad per se. It's just, it is not what I had envisioned in my mind. Initially, I was just kind of overwhelmed by this shirt. And so sometimes when that happens, I'll put the shirt on my mannequin and just kind of leave it in my workspace or my office space for a little while, kind of get used to it, wrap my head around the way it looks and look at it periodically. And when I did that, I really started to fall in love with this shirt. I mean, I do really love the colors. Even though I was wanting like a softer look, I still think these colors are really pretty. The pinks were definitely overtaken by the blues and the darker pink colors that I used, so the lighter colored pinks just kind of get lost. But you still get hints of them, just not what I had envisioned. So it's not my favorite mandala I've ever made, but I do think it is a pretty shirt. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.